They're moving slow. They don't like to, and that's what I like about my team. Very humble. But today I want to acknowledge you. So I just want to say thank you for coming out this morning, and thank you for spending your morning with us as we acknowledge some of our business members and some of those who for the very first time have launched their business, and today was an opportunity for them to exhibit and share in what they do. And if you're here today, could you please stand? If you're a new entrepreneur and this was your very first expo, you went through, amazing. And this is what we are doing. When you ask, what is the chamber, what do? We do what is best for our members, and we promote our members. We promote and we advocate for you. We make sure that you have the things that you need to sustain your business and also to grow your business, which is why we are continuing to use our theme year after year, partnering to growth. And wow, thank you. Okay, I'm back on track here. And the chamber, of course, we have a mission, and that is to serve our Black businesses, people of color, and their communities through access to education, technical assistance, advocacy, and economic development. We serve that in 3 ways: through entrepreneurship, which we're dedicated to mentoring our entrepreneurs. And if we've done a great job with that, let us hear it, because we've been, we got a small team, but we're growing. Our goal is to make sure that we help oversee your business and make sure you have tools such as these type of events to be successful and also to mingle and network. We also advocate for you. Some of you don't know, but we are bringing in legislators and people who are making the decisions about our businesses every day. So you're going to hear from one of those members, a couple of them on the panel today. And they are all the way here from the west side of Washington State, which is where all of our policies are being made and all of our political influence, where they actually do all their work in their business. So I'm constantly commuting back and forth, and also communing back and forth with those people, with you in mind, on my heart, and also with you in mind, with your business and what's important in the forefront of your sustainability. So that work is always important and it's never ending. Again, access to capital. So many of you have told me that without money, you can't start, you can't succeed. And I, for one, am a witness to that. I just shared with a very important person who does not want to be named this morning or called out. She strictly told me not to do that. But the person who when I first decided to do business development, of course, it was after 2020. I really took some time off from my businesses from traveling all over. You guys know that I was working international. I just came back from Thailand right before everything ended as far as the COVID-19 and the pandemic. But it gave me time to focus on not just what I had going on in my life, but other people and what they had going on and what they needed the most. So some of you have been a birth of some of the energy that I actually made sure that I was intentional in having, and ensuring that if you had a business, if you had a gift or a talent, that you were able to monetize that gift and talent so that you can stand your business up and be successful. But of course, I couldn't have done it either without money. And I remember when I decided to start all these businesses, then created another issue, which was, okay, you need a home for your business. So once you start your business, where will these businesses continue to live and to grow? And so that is the reason why we now have the Washington African American Chamber of Commerce, so that once you decide to, successfully launch your business, now you can come to these type of events, be recognized for your hard work and achievement, network with like-minded people, such as those who are in the room, get an opportunity to hear from stakeholders and those who are have the resources to help you advance your business. And if it wasn't for this individual planting that small seed, it was enough money. It was big to me. Of course, I'm grateful for every donation and every sponsorship that we have. But at that time, I took the little and I made it grow to what we have today. And so I just want to thank her, even though she doesn't want acknowledgement. Can y'all give her a hand even for the contribution? And of course, our team. We have a mix of board members and team members. So Chisa Blair, of course, she's been very inspirational in helping us to achieve our events and keeping us motivated and staying on track with all of our events. Robin Calloway is our president. She's our active president. Thank you, Robin. We also have some board members that make sure that we are staying on track with all of our bylaws, our policies, our community engagement, and our grant writing. So thank you, Eric Fitzgerald. Are you here? Can you stand? Thank you. That's also my better half, Kimberly Gallatin. I know she's in the room. You probably met her at registration. Thank you so much. She is definitely new to our team and working graciously. Monica Sanchez, all the way from Yakima, because we are expanding, not just right here in the East. We're trying to make sure that we have Yakima and Walla Walla right now. I'm trying to stay 1 hour in arm reach of each one of those communities. So far, Monica is definitely making sure that Yakima is engaged. Do we have any Yakima in here this morning? At least wanted to, just, okay, thank you for coming. And Cassandra, our treasurer, some of you are gonna receive a check straight out of her hand this morning. So thank you, Cassandra, for being here. You can stand also, Cassandra, thank you. Okay, are we going right into it? That's what I'd like to hear. All right, it's that time. Are you ready? Okay, I'm done. I know that it takes a lot when you are in this arena to travel and to make sure you try to make it to every event. And I don't take it lightly, this individual being here with us today. So before I read his bio, I just want to thank you again, Mike, for coming over and spending this morning. It's Saturday. It's not even a work day. It's your off day. And I just want to acknowledge that too. You didn't have to come. And being the Washington State Treasurer, I'm sure that's a heavy lift already. And I'm just glad that you purposed in your heart to be here with us today. Thank you so much. And all of our panelists, but now we're going to focus on Mike Pelliciotti. Mike was elected the 24th Treasurer of Washington in 2020. As Washington's Chief Financial Officer, Mike is dedicated to increasing government transparency, protecting Washington's financial health, and leading policies that best serve our state's working families and retirees. Before being elected state treasurer, Mike was an assistant attorney general and served North Pierce and South King counties in the Washington's House of Representatives. There, he led efforts to increase penalties to corporate crime and get dark money out of politics. That's right. As state treasurer, Mike is leading good government reforms and policy proposals to reduce financial barriers for all Washingtonians. Last year, he was selected as a Rodell Fellow, the bipartisan recognition of America's 24th most promising elected leaders. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration and received his master's in rural development as a United States Fulbright Scholar. His law degree is from Gonzaga University. Mike is a lifelong fan of Gonzaga basketball. Give him a warm welcome and thank you again.
Good morning. How's everyone doing today? All right, it is great to see you. Thank you to Shawnee for that wonderful introduction. So great to be at the Washington African American Chamber of Commerce. I was actually talking to Bob Ferguson just last night on the way here because he spoke with all of you last year, and he was saying what a great experience he had, and I look forward to sharing with him not only how wonderful it is to be with all of you, but just how this organization continues to grow under the great leadership here, and that's really exciting as well. This is actually my 5th time this month in Central or Eastern Washington, which works out well because my mom lives in Spokane, So, since being elected to statewide office, she loves the idea because it gets me out to this part of the state a lot more often. It's a chance to see her and connect with her. But I want to give actually two shout outs real quick. One is to Jesse Johnson in our office, who is back there. I don't know if you want to say hi, real Jesse. Some of you know Jesse. He's our outreach coordinator in the treasurer's office. But another shout out I want to give is actually to Cassandra, your treasurer, the most important position in any organization. Give a round of applause to Cassandra. It is great to be with you today. I always start talking a little bit about what the treasurer's office does, if that's all right, because most folks are like, hey, we have a state treasurer. That makes sense. That probably has something to do with money, which is true. But the treasurer's office kind of has three core functions. It handles certain investments for the state. So we have about $35 billion of state and local investments that our office is responsible for managing. We handle kind of the issuance of bonds, so essentially the debt issuances for the state. So we have about $22 billion of bonds, previously issued bonds for our state. And then we handle, I'm essentially the state's banker as well, right? So the cash flow, the money in and money out of the state's bank are some of kind of the core operations. But one of the fourth and very important role of the state treasurer is also addressing certain long-term financial policies for the state of Washington. And I do that through a lot of different boards and commissions, one of which I actually saw outside, the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. I saw they have a table out there, and that is one of the boards that I serve on. But one of the things that's been very important for me since becoming state treasurer is focusing, as you heard when Shawnee read my bio, is what can we do to address issues of access to capital in our state, and how can we make sure that folks have better access to capital and be able to essentially achieve their business and other kind of God-given potential, right? And give everyone an opportunity to have access to opportunity in our state. Before I start talking about some of those ideas and some of the things we're doing in the treasurer's office, I kind of ground us a little bit on just kind of the core work of the office and let you know that things are actually in a really good place. And I think that's always important for folks to hear. First, when interest rates were low a couple years ago, we actually kind of refinanced our existing debt, and in doing so, we saved the people of the state of Washington over $580 million by locking in lower interest rates. As interest rates have gone up, we've actually hugged that interest rate curve very tightly, meaning that our investment returns on the 4-year outlook are sending an extra $1.8 billion in new money to the state of Washington to do important things in our state. So I always talk about that as we're like one of the offices, the state offices that actually generates money through good investment work and making sure we're generating money for the people of the state of Washington to do important things. And then the investments we do on behalf of local governments, our returns now are 50 times what they were at this time in 2021, right? And that means an extra $3 million more a day going to local governments to do just kind of core foundational work, make sure that pothole is fixed, make sure that essential services are being met. And I'm really proud of the work that our team does with that. But one of the things we also do is we engage a lot with the legislature, right? Because a lot of this work is actually done because of the work by the legislature. You're hearing about Shawnee in terms of everything going on in Olympia. I promise it's not just Olympia General. It's a lot of folks making decisions that we want to partner with very closely on a lot of those issues. And we've done that by making kind of 3 general recommendations to the legislature on kind of good financial management, right? Just kind of that core stuff, again, kind of grounding us and making sure that things are in a good place. We've done that first by making sure pensions are well funded. That was the first of our 3 recommendations, is to make sure our state pensions are well funded and that some of the older plans had additional funds put into them. And I'm proud to report that our pensions now, depending on how you calculate it, are either the number 1 or number 3 best funded pension now in the country, right? Which is great because, one, people have earned those pensions. I feel very strongly about that. I talk about that a lot. I think of my grandmother a lot, my nana, and my grandfather as well, who spent their entire life working as a janitor and a cleaning lady. I always say their easiest day is still harder than my hardest day. But they were lucky enough to work within the state system. And so they earned a state pension and the dignity of retirement. And I point that out because folks earn those pensions. We need to protect those and make sure that those are well protected. But it's also critical for our financial health, right? Because there's no more expensive debt you can have than an underfunded pension liability. So the fact that those are so well funded, the legislature has followed our recommendations related to that is a good thing. That's kind of good just to to be in a good place. It also means, as it relates to our recommendation as to the kind of the debt levels for the state. We've made very clear recommendations as to the debt service ratio for the state of Washington, and that should not exceed 5% of the total money coming into the state. The legislature has followed that recommendation as well. That's a good thing because, I mentioned we have about $22 billion worth of debt. That's real money. Like, don't let anyone fool you. That is a lot of money, but it's being well managed to make sure that it doesn't exceed kind of what can be afforded to be paid back by the state of Washington. And then our third recommendation has been related to reserves, right? The money that we have kind of sitting around in our accounts. And that has been recommending that there be a 10% reserve level for the state of Washington. Well, the legislature has followed that recommendation as well. And I think, for most crowds, I kind of break that down for why that's important, but obviously with a bunch of business leaders here, you can understand, well, when your pensions are well funded, when your debt is well managed, and when your reserves are at sufficient levels, that instinctively is good. We kind of recognize that as being good. But some of the folks who also look at that are our credit rating agencies. And our credit rating agencies, of course, are kind of like the credit score for the state of Washington that determines whether people loan money to the state, allow the money to, what interest rates paid, how much it costs to pay that money back. And the state of Washington has just received from Moody's a maintained AAA credit rating, which is the top credit rating that any state can receive. So that's great. Standard & Poor's, another credit rating agency, just had a positive outlook for our state this year, but U.S. News & World Report just this year rated Washington State #1 in the nation for long-term fiscal stability. Okay, so I point that out just before I start going into the exciting stuff that I love to work on, that things are in an okay place, right? Like, things are always volatile. We're living in a volatile economy. We're living in a situation where literally months from now, we're already having to prepare for the fact that you could have a different administration that looks to withhold federal funds, right? I mean, this is a volatile economic condition like no other time. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. Things can change very quickly. But what I can tell you is things are well managed in your state treasury. But I also recognize, for all that good, not everyone is benefiting equally from that good financial health, right? And I always kind of want to give that context, right? Like, start with that, because I just have core beliefs, which is that everyone should have economic opportunity at birth. They should have the tools to economically thrive throughout their career, and they should have the dignity of retirement security later in life. These are not crazy ideas, right? These are just kind of the foundational ideas that are critical to a good economy, right? The opportunity where everyone can have the opportunity to grow and connect with opportunities. And, we've moved forward on a lot of these issues. One of the bills we passed this year, talking about retirement security, I was talking about our state pensions. That's great. I feel very good about that. But that's great if you work for the state, right? Or government. Well, we have it set up now where nearly half of folks working in the state of Washington have no retirement savings. 2 out of 3 millennials. It's even worse for Gen Z, right? There's less and less access to retirement security. And that has been one of the things that we addressed this year, which was saying, hey, we were doing great work for those who are in the state system. What can we be doing to create systems where folks can create wealth through retirement and focus on their retirement needs? And that's why we put forward legislation called Washington Saves that was passed into law this year. Legislation our office requested that was signed by the governor, and starting in 2027, we are now going to be able to provide access to retirement options for 1.2 million Washingtonians in the state of Washington. And look, that instinctively is good, right? Folks can set up their own individual retirement accounts. This is something where folks can set money aside. The money can be professionally invested on their behalf. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to be worrying about, hey, what's the latest trend on TikTok or on YouTube or something, right? Money that can be professionally managed, you don't have to think about. And we actually connected significantly all around the state with community on what was it that really needed to be addressed to deal with that potential retirement crisis. And I say potential retirement crisis because when 2 out of 3 millennials have zero retirement savings, right, that is a challenge, not just for those individuals, but for our state treasury, right? Because we're relying now on folks who are retired who have money to spend, right? We rely on that sales tax and just the operations, but it's also just critical to making sure that our state treasury is in a good place. So, I feel we had great community meetings in Yakima and other parts around the state where we heard from folks on the best way to set this up. And to set this up in a way where it's easy, it's easy for workers, and it's easy for employees, and it's easy for employers. That there's no additional expense that needs to be paid by the employers as a part of this, and that this simply allows for those employees who currently do not have access to retirement to be able to have the option for an automatic individual retirement account. So I'm excited that that's going to be going into effect in 2027. But when I talk about the ability to economically thrive, look, if we do not address the fact that in the state of Washington, we do not require financial education in our schools today, we are not going to be providing the economic empowerment opportunities that people need to be able to navigate the world. And that is why I've put forward legislation to finally require that financial education be taught in our schools today. And don't get me wrong, I mean, look, I've been to each of our 39 counties, often more than once, given hundreds if not thousands of speeches now. I've yet to meet a single individual, talking to tens of thousands of people, and I don't think it's going to change today or at any other day. Single person who's like, you know, Mike, I don't need to know a single thing more about financial education. I got that thing covered. Leave me alone. What more do I need to know about financial, coaching or literacy? Nothing, right? Never once have I heard that. We all recognize we have more to learn and that we want to have access. And so in our office, we've actually expanded access to financial education. I was giving a shout out to Jesse, who the other things he does is he leads our financial education work in our office. And this is just critical. But one of the things that's been really exciting to me in putting forward this legislation is that, you would think it would be adults who'd be saying, hey, Mike, what can I do to make this happen, right? Like, I understand this. What can we do? It's the students. It's the students who are saying, well, how is this not in my school? How am I not being trained to be able to have the tools to be able to navigate the world today? And it's particularly great here to be in the Tri-Cities because I think of Martin in Spokane, who's a student in Spokane who's a great help, but actually being here in Kennewick, Ashwin from Southridge High School here in Kennewick was a great partner in putting this legislation together. So I pointed out that literally every corner of the state recognizes the importance of this, and that this is critical for folks to be able to thrive economically throughout their career, to have those tools. And part of that tools comes from the economic empowerment that comes from giving folks the opportunity to have access to the tools to be able to thrive. And so that's one of the other issues we're putting forward. But when we talk about financial education, also, people talk about STEM jobs a lot. STEM is important, but it seems like when we talk about STEM, we forget about the M, which stands for math, right? And that is part of the financial education because every community needs folks who have that foundational training at the local bank, right? To be able to have those tools, the local accountant, we're looking at issues in terms of school funding and the importance of making sure that every school district has folks who are well trained in issues of math and being able to navigate these issues. So again, foundational for so much of the work that we need to do. But the legislation I want to talk to you about today that is particularly important from my perspective is that the first part of those core beliefs, which is economic opportunity. And it's why our office has put forward legislation, why I've requested the legislature pass our Washington Future Fund, which is our baby bonds proposal here for the state of Washington. Now, when I talk about baby bonds, essentially the whole idea is we're asking that the legislature set aside a portion of the kind of $1.8 billion of new money we sent them in the amount of $4,000 for every child born pursuant to an Apple Health funded birth, a Medicaid funded birth, right? Well, in the state of Washington, that's 47% of the births in our state. In rural Washington, it's 2 out of 3. And in several rural counties in this state, it's 3 out of 4. So, Shanae was talking about my bio as getting a master's degree in rural development. I think about rural economic development issues a lot and how important it is to inject capital into communities that for far too long have either been denied access to capital or have seen capital outflow into kind of Puget Sound or more kind of wealthy areas. And there is no more effective way to inject capital back into communities that need access to capital than providing the capital at birth. Because here's the reality, is within days of one's birth, there are 2 different economic trajectories being created. There are those being born to loving parents and grandparents who the first thing they do is they set up a savings account, set up stocks, set up bonds, literally within days of one's birth. And then you have the other half of our state where those parents and grandparents are no less loving, and they would if they could, but that money's not being set aside. So what does that mean? It means when that newborn is now a young adult, you have half of Washingtonians where that money has grown and is there to remove those capital barriers and remove the access to the opportunity for educational pursuits, even vocational pursuits. I was mentioning I was here in the Tri-Cities about 3 weeks ago. I was meeting with a young apprentice who was doing vocational work in Pasco. And he was saying how much he felt a sense of guilt from his privilege that he was able to simply be at his parents' house to do his apprenticeship, because he knew people who didn't have that same opportunity because they didn't have the capital access to be able to do an apprenticeship opportunity and get the vocational training that comes from that, to be able to take time to do a pre-apprenticeship that often takes a couple months at no pay. Well, telling someone to take a couple months at no pay, I mean, folks are like, I gotta work, right? I got a job, I gotta put a roof over my head, I got kids to take care of, right? And so we need to make sure that folks have that opportunity for access to capital for those educational pursuits, those vocational pursuits, that the capital is available